Hey guys, welcome back to another video after all the transfer madness of this week. There's actually football as well as transfers, which seems crazy. Sometimes I feel like people just watch football just for transfers. But anyway, we are playing our third Premier League game of the season. Newly promoted Sheffield United this weekend on Sunday, so I thought this would be a good chance as well to get some info on a club that not all of us will know a lot about the squad at the moment. You know, what's going on at Sheffield United. So I always think it's a good chance to get a little bit of insight. Hence this lovely gentleman alongside me. Nick, how you doing? You good, mate?
Yeah, I'm very, very good. Thank you very much. Not so much football-wise, but I'm sure we'll get onto that very soon.
Yeah, it's been a few years since we last spoke, and obviously a lot's happened in the world of football since then. My team's been very lucky. I'm not going to lie. We've had an awful lot of good stuff, and you've been up and down. But you know, you're back in the Premier League and so on, and of course, you know, there's plenty of stories to tell. There's some Man City links as well, which we'll discuss in a bit. Of course, as well, what I say, by the way, do check out Sheffield United, where there'll be a link in the description. I forgot to mention at the start of the video, it's a very good Sheffield United channel. Do it. But anyway. I'll start at the start of the season. I'll start at the mood. Of course, you went up last season behind a dominant Burnley. Of course, it was built off a couple of Man City loanies as well, potentially. How was the general mood going into the season? Before the first ball was kicked, how were Sheffield United fans feeling ahead of this Premier League season?
Really not great, I'm going to be honest. I was trying to think of a word that wasn't a swear word then, but
cheers.
No, not good at all.
Appreciated, yeah.
No, not good at all. I think the biggest problem was the fact that we ended last season with a better side than we started this season. And obviously, you've alluded to the two Man City lads, James McAtee and Tommy Doyle. They were a big part of the end of the season, I would say. Yeah. Not so much the beginning, because James McAtee struggled really early on, imposing himself in these championship games. And also, Tommy Doyle found himself injured before a ball was kicked. Yeah. So they both had difficult starts to the season, you might say. But they came up clutch for us right at the end of the season, especially James McAtee scoring many goals. So we went kind of past the season thinking, this is a fantastic team. We've had a really good end to the season. Yeah. We might be able to get James McAtee back on loan. We might be able to sign Tommy Doyle. We might be able to keep this team together. Neither of those two happened. We've also lost two of our best players, one in 𝙏𝙬𝙚𝙬𝙚𝙧, who is, in my opinion, the greatest player that I've ever set eyes on at Bramall Lane in a red and white shirt. And unfortunately, we sold him on to Marseille, and that wasn't for the money. He only went for, I believe it was 15 million in the last year of his contract. But Marseille was the team that he grew up supporting. They came in for him. Unfortunately, there's not much you can do about that other than try and get as much money for him as possible. I don't think he was a player that was ever going to down tools, but at the same time, if he wants to leave, is he going to put in that effort that you're going to need to stay up? Because it's going to be a struggle this season. I think we all know that. Even if we'd have kept the whole team that we did last season and built on that, I still think it would have been a struggle whatever way. We just don't have the money to compete with the big boys. So... yeah, we've obviously sold him. We also sold Sander Berge to a relegation rival, you could say, in Burnley, which wasn't great. But at the same time, Sander wanted to leave as well. And I think we've replaced him very well in 𝙏𝙬𝙨 from Coventry City. I think that 𝙏𝙬𝙨 scored second game of the season, scored an absolute fantastic goal against Nottingham Forest. Really showed us what it's like to be a blade, because putting himself about, getting stuck in, and obviously that little bit of quality that we've lacked. So first game of the season was really poor against Palace, but we were without Vinny Souza that we'd signed, defensive midfielder, stopper. Really big, imposing gentleman. And then obviously 𝙏𝙬𝙨, the guy that's going to pull the strings. So we're in a better position than we were a couple of games ago, but it's still going to be a struggle this season, I fear.
Yeah, I mean, and going back to Ndiaye, it's understandable. I mean, you could argue that he got you back to the Premier League and he's done his bit and so on. And ultimately, if you can never blame any footballer, and I think this is like a universal truth. Any footballer who wants to play for the club that they support, it's one of those things where we all go, fair enough. You sort of get it, you know. It doesn't make it easier to take, but it's just understandable, you know. Like it doesn't matter where you are, if your team call and you get it, and it's obviously painful for Sheffield United fans, but that is life. I don't know, Marseille in Champions League this season. I'm not sure how they did last year.
Well, this is the funny thing as well, because I was saying constantly, they're a Champions League team. How can we compete with that? And they lost in their qualifying round. So they're not a Champions League team anymore.
Fair enough. I mean, it happens and so on. Of course, the start of the season hasn't, as you said, he's alluded to, it hasn't been particularly excellent. Nottingham Forest, okay, Forest away. They're obviously a team that you'd be hoping for points on because, they're going to be down there as well at the start of the season. But, it's still a difficult team to go away at. Obviously, they bought a whole bunch of players last season. They stayed up, but I guess it was the first game of the season that probably felt a little bit tough to take because obviously you'd be hoping at Bramall Lane it would have been rocking a little bit. But look, I didn't watch the game. I'm going to be honest with you, Nick. But I've looked at I've seen the highlights and I've seen the stats. They were all over you, Palace, by the looks of it. Statistically, I mean, I'm looking at 24 shots, 8 on target to your 1. It mustn't have. The mood must have been a bit disappointing because I guess you were expecting. I'm not trying to stick in the knife here. I'm just trying to discuss where it's at. I guess you would have been hoping or expecting potentially. I know. Sorry, man. The blade. Not sticking the blade here. Sorry. You would have been the blades. Even it's a pair of them. You would have been hoping, I guess, for a little bit more at the start of the season, even with the issues. Is that fair?
Yes and no, really. I think the only thing that was going to take us through that game against Palace first game was the crowd, because we had so many injuries. We had not done well in the transfer window at that point. The philosophy from the transfer point of view was to buy young, promising players from leagues that you're not going to get Premier League tax on, or you're not going to get English tax on, or you're not going to get even any of the bigger leagues like La Liga or Bundesliga or any leagues like that. It was Swedish leagues, Danish leagues, Norwegian leagues, things like that. That's what we were trying to do. And then towards the end of the window, we were going to see where we were, where the team was, and then kind of buy players accordingly. And that's how it's gone. But we certainly weren't in the best possible place to go into that Palace game, first game of the season. Like I said, I think that fans could have took us through that game. We tried our best. We just didn't have enough quality on the pitch. Like I said, we've got a lot of injuries at the moment as well, some just coming back. But we started the game with Will Asula up front, who is a young lad that's come through the academy that had probably only played 2 or 3 championship games before that. So you're telling him to go into a game where he's playing against seasoned Premier League players, because Palace have been in the Premier League for a long time.
Yeah.
Whether they've done well or not,
no, you're right,
they've been there. Yeah. And then we had Benny Traore behind him, who is a Swedish league player who's come from there. He did really well there, but you can tell that he's not primed and ready for the Premier League because he's little skinny lad that just got knocked about quite a lot. I still think there's a lot of potential in there, but we're having to start with these players because we're not recruited quick enough, and we'd also picked up a load of injuries. So I think going into that game, we knew that was going to be one of the worst teams that we could have put out all season because we weren't ready for it. So I don't think, we got battered. There's no two ways about it. They scored 2 disallowed goals as well, so it could have been a lot worse. But we expected it, and we were thinking we're going to get players back. We're going to bring other players in, because I think the owners were thinking, let's try and do this on a shoestring budget, and then you get to it and it's like, we don't have enough quality here. We could be challenging Derby for that infamous record, but they've put their hand in the pocket. They brought in Vinicius Souza, as I mentioned earlier, defensive midfielder that we've been crying out for a long time. We've needed that big, strong, intimidating defensive midfielder. I don't think we've had one for probably 10, 15 years, something like that, maybe longer. I can't remember one. And then obviously we brought in 𝙏𝙬𝙨𝙩𝙖𝙬 as well, who's going to be that player that's going to score those exciting goals, and his delivery into the box is also second to none. So I think that 𝙏𝙬𝙨𝙩𝙀, in my opinion, could play for probably any team in the bottom half of the Premier League. I think he's that good. Maybe he needs some experience in the Premier League, but I think we've got a gem on our hands there. And I think the problem when we're recording this video is the fact that Cameron Archer is very, very close to signing. I think he's already signed. The announcement hasn't come out yet, so that's quite exciting because he was fantastic in the Championship last season for Middlesbrough, created a lot of the goals for 𝙬𝙬𝙨𝙩𝙬𝙧 to score 28, I think he scored, and I think Cameron Archer got 11 or 12 himself, but lots of assists, and he tore us apart at Bramall Lane last season, so it's nice to see him in a red and white shirt. Hopefully, by the time this video goes out, he will have signed, because I'm refreshing Twitter constantly.
I know that feeling.
Yeah, so there's him, and we're also hopefully, which we might get onto, bringing in James McAtee on loan.
Oh, we will see, man. We will see. You'll see. I mean, I was looking, obviously, like, I guess it's not the worst thing in the world to start from a low point sometimes, because you know, of course, like, and look, it was only 1-0, and you weren't exactly embarrassed by Crystal Palace or anything like that. You know, it wasn't like you got, you know, absolutely dumped on or anything like that. You know, like, but then even the Forest game, like, did you sense as a Sheffield United fan, any sense of change or improvement in the Forest game?
Yes.
What was the difference for you then? What happened?
I don't entirely know what happened, but it just felt like, I don't know, the mood certainly changed because the players would just seem to be putting in more effort. I know it sounds silly, but making those extra 5-yard runs and not kind of letting them come onto us, because I think the idea, they scored after 2 minutes, Forest, and we were thinking, let's sit in and let's try and do them on the break or get some balls into the box, see if we can play a bit of football, because I think further on into the season, we would have looked at both those first 2 games as games that we should and could and possibly should take points from. And we weren't too excited going into the Forest game because of what happened in the Palace game. Obviously, 𝙤𝙬𝙨𝙬𝙬 and Vinny Souza both played, so that strengthened our midfield massively. But we were still not really that excited for it because of what happened at Palace. But 2 minutes into the game, conceding a goal, a really, really sloppy goal, the crosser not being challenged, and then the striker just not being challenged either. So it really poor to see. But after kind of like 20, 25 minutes, Forest was kind of coming at us. And then it just all switched. I think they'd taken their foot a little bit off the gas, and it gave us a chance to grow into the game. We were stopping attacks early. We were breaking on them. Yeah. We were passing the ball really crisply, and we were just pressing them. And it was great to see we were getting forward, which it didn't feel like we were going to get forward at all in that game from early on. And it really, there was a massive momentum swing. We obviously scored the goal early in the second half as well. And I think the problem was that both Vinny Souza, Harmer, and other players that hadn't played too much football and hadn't had much of a pre-season came down with cramp. So I think if those sorts of players would have stayed on, because we ended up bringing on, I think it was 3 academy products to replace them, and that's when we conceded the goal. So I think after that happened, the momentum swung back in Forest's favour, and they managed to find the goal, and we didn't. But there was a chance in that game where Benny Traore goes sort of 1-on-1. I think his legs are a little bit gone at that point. So seeing him run away and have a go at Matt Turner's goal, it always looked like he was going to pull a save off the goalkeeper, and then they went the other end and scored from a lovely little header. But yeah, it's one of those games where we definitely saw improvement, and I think the players actually just thought, wait a second, we're not playing Man City, we're not playing Arsenal, we're not playing Chelsea, we're playing Forest away from home. Now, no disrespect to Forest, because they did really well staying up last season, but we're coming to the City ground. We're in the Premier League with Premier League players. Let's act like it, and we certainly did. And it showed that we are not going to get bulldozed this season, I don't think.
I mean, so a lot of it is mentality, as you're saying. Like, a lot of it is like an acceptance that you're a Premier League side, and if you act like one, you play like one, you're going to lose the odd game here and there, but you could also win some. And like, it could be a really tight, battle to stay up this season, and sometimes the more positive approach can actually just make the difference. Win one extra game could just be enough. So it's obviously the only way is sort of, you would think up, you'd hope so. probably not the best game for you next, if we're being honest. I don't want to be that guy and be patronising, but
I just wanted to say that, the last time we're in the Premier League, you'll probably remember we didn't win for 16, 17 games. And that's what we actually ended up with, more points than Norwich had the season before in the end, because we had a decent end to the season. But everybody forgets about that. Everyone remembers us as one of the worst teams ever. And actually we weren't. It was just, it was the struggle of getting that first win. And once you've lost kind of 5 or 6 games and only drawn a couple, everybody comes to Bramall Lane and thinks we can't lose to this team. So there were many games where we were drawing and we possibly should have won, but teams were sitting in and trying to stop us winning, because we can't be that team that's the first team to lose to Sheffield United. And my worry
you won games
was
by shame, basically.
Yeah, I think so.
Hey, if it works, man, it works. If you're like Simpsons with Homer's like just getting punched eventually, they'll tire eventually. And you're like, it's a bit like that. But whatever works, man. I got to be honest with you. I don't think City will be that side. I feel like they're a little bit different. I always try and do like a head and heart thing here. Like, what's your, how are you feeling, ahead of this game, and how do you expect Sheffield United will set up? Is it going to be a part of the bus scenario? Are you going to come at us a little bit, or what's going to happen?
I think in this league, probably 50 to 75% of teams probably try the park the bus
keep going
approach to play Man City. And I think, obviously, with a team like us going up and we've struggled in the first couple of games, we will try to do that. I don't think that's the right thing to do necessarily, because I don't think we're good enough defensively at the moment. So I think there will be, I would like to see a park the bus sort of mentality, but at the same time, try and get out, because I know that Man City of kind of the last few years, you've had times where you've been a bit dodgy defensively. I don't necessarily think that's this season, but I think there's certainly a chance for us to try and get up the field and possibly get a goal on the break, or like I say, from corners and stuff like that. But I certainly think that we are going to park the bus as much as we possibly can. I hope that we at least attempt to try and score a goal, though. That's my slight worry, that we're just going to park the bus and hope for a 0-0. But I do think that I don't think it'll be as easy as what a lot of Man City fans will probably think. I think we'll end up losing the game maybe 2 or 3-0, but I do think we'll stay in the game for more than 2 minutes like we did against Forest. Okay,
and it's very, very possible. The City don't, like the against Newcastle, we conceded 1 shot on target. Like, we were absolutely excellent defensively. I mean, Pep's probably weirdly the most defensive manager in world football right now. He just plays centre backs after centre backs after centre backs, and he does that with Ake at right back and Stones or Kanji at right left back. Sorry, the other way around. We were a very solid side, and I think he's built. That's what the treble was sort of built on. It's one of those things where. But at the same time, you never know. Like, it is early season, and there is always that kind of wild card effect of, Foden was great in the number 10 the other day. He's not Kevin De Bruyne yet in that role. You never know. You might not kind of fully get there. And Haaland the other day against Newcastle missed a whole bunch of sitters, which is very un-Haaland-like. And he can occasionally do that. He's weird, Haaland. He can bag a hat-trick the next game, having like just an absolute stinker out of nowhere. So there's always that chance. But look, I do feel it might be quite difficult for you if City turn up, obviously. But you never know. You never know. And away at Bramall Lane, that sort of new stadium for a lot of these players as well. It'll be interesting to see how it goes. We shouldn't not touch on, though, Tommy Doyle and McAtee. Like, from your side, what are you hearing over there? Like, what's the situation? Because Tommy Doyle's a weird one, man, because it's like he's sort of in nowhere land at the moment with City. He's not on the bench or anything like that. He's not been involved in pre-season with City. He's sort of seen as a guy who's definitely seen the surplus to requirements to an extent. He's very liked at City, but he's definitely not in the first team picture, which I think is a little bit. I think right now with this, we've got a lot of injuries. I feel like he probably should just be on the bench because he's got so much experience now to this extent. But he isn't. And then McAtee, of course, has actually been around the first team picture. He's been there. He's come on for a minute or so, not much, but he's been involved in the first team. But there's all these links to players at the moment, like Mateus Nunes, even Eze at Palace has been linked. And of course, we've signed Jeremy Doku yesterday, the flying winger. And De Bruyne, when he comes back, McAtee's chances could get pushed down a little bit. So there is potential for him to move on. And it feels like he's very much waiting until the end of the window, which is only a few days away, to see what his chances are. Is there still an interest as far as the Sheffield United fans feel in these two players? And what's the news at your side?
It's a weird one, because for me, Tommy Doyle has always been not a Man City player if you know what I mean. I don't feel like he is. He's not a Rodri. He's not a Bernardo Silva. I don't
James
feel like
Ward-Prowse to me, like a younger James Ward-Prowse. Yeah. I think he's very similar, box to box, kind of bit more low action. He's a nice footballer technically, of course, but he's not like like he's not Rodri that way. I get what you mean.
But he is a Sheffield United player for me. He really is. Yeah. He reminds me of a right-footed John Fleck, obviously with more quality. But it's kind of get stuck in, win your battles. He's not going to be a big, strong defensive midfielder, but he doesn't need to be that. Like you say, he's more of a James Ward-Prowse box to box where he can take a good corner, he can whip a good ball in, he can score a screamer like he did for us against Blackburn last season in the FA Cup. I would have loved to have seen us sign him, and there's a lot of weird things that's gone on with Tommy Doyle recently. Blades fans thought that he'd signed. Was absolutely adamant that he'd sign. I think he's almost pushing to sign for Sheffield United, Tommy Doyle, because he changed his picture on Twitter to him in a Sheffield United shirt, which fans are always going to read too much into that, I'm sure. Because we would change our profile picture to something different and not think anything of it. And footballers probably think the same. But yeah, I think a lot of things have happened where it seems like he's tried to suggest that he wants a move. And he probably needs a move. He probably deserves a move, but it doesn't seem like anybody's that interested in signing him.
It's weird.
Which I'm shocked at, because I think he's a player. Wolves were interested in signing him right at the start of the window, weren't they? And so were we.
Well, that's the thing. Well, you never know, actually. I didn't know that, but that's true. We're trying to sign Mateus Nunes right now, so you never know. It could be that they actually reignite that interest. Yeah. But I feel like I feel like a club like Sheffield United does suit him, and it could be that, someone who's a bit of a set-piece specialist, that could get you a few points. It could happen, and Doyle is it might not, but Doyle is also a bit of a natural leader that way. He's quite aggressive, he's assertive, he's 100% kind of player. Could be useful. It could be useful in a relegation race to have a guy who could whip in across and get you a couple of goals towards the end of the season. Even if it's just off the bench, because he is a good set-piece specialist, and he's the kind of guy as well. I mean this with great respect. That if you went down, he'd stay, and he'd probably get you back. Be there and be even better the next season and be a regular part of the team. And I think he'd stay around. And I think there's something to be said for that. And I think looking at some of the signings as well, I think you'd probably that some of these lads would probably stay around if you went down as well. And you can be a bit smart that way. And yeah, I'm surprised. I'm surprised that a deal hasn't been agreed. And I saw a rumor that apparently from a city in the know that apparently a couple of Sheffield United staff don't rate him, which is interesting. Some do, some don't. So there's a bit of a and this guy's really connected. Go.
The thing is, with last season, he certainly came in when Ollie Norwood is a bit of a Sheffield United legend, but recently he has been coming under a lot of scrutiny with some of his performances, or I say recently, at this point. And that's when we brought Tommy Doyle in, and he almost kind of changed the Norwood role, if you like, and it was more energy, more tough tackling, because Norwood's certainly a fantastic footballer, but he's slowed down in recent years. Norwood's, I think he's probably got the record for the most championship promotions. He's got lots. I think he's got 4 championship promotions. I'm not sure if anyone's beaten that, but that's always been spoken about.
Yeah.
And Tommy Doyle came in at a time when we were struggling in the midfield, and he just sat in there perfectly and did what Norwood did and more.
Yeah.
So I am surprised that we haven't gone in for him, because we've brought in 3 midfielders that we expect to start week in, week out. And I think that's the reason why we've not gone in for Tommy Doyle, or we probably would have done. I think it's maybe more of like the English tax, if you like, Premier League tax, that we're thinking, let's go abroad and try and bring some players in for a bit less, and we can probably stretch the budget a bit more.
Yeah. You probably get him for like 10 million now. You look at the Vinny, obviously Sowers are coming for around that, didn't he? I think, for what I know.
Yeah. And I think we were thinking more 2015 at first, and maybe that's why we looked elsewhere. But I think moving on to James McAtee, I think the reason why we're more interested in McAtee than Doyle right now is because we do have those central midfielders, and we're looking for someone who's a bit more attack-minded, that's going to kind of break the lines and find the strikers and stuff like that, and obviously pick up some goals as well, because he certainly did that for us at the back end of last season. And I don't think we would have got. I don't think we'd have finished that many points in front of third if it wasn't for James McAtee popping up with goals here and there. So I, in my opinion, I don't think James McAtee is the right player for us this season because he's very slight. He's not the quickest of players. I think that he may get bullied a little bit in the Premier League and fall out of games a little bit.
Yeah.
I would have liked to have seen someone, I think at the start of the window before Cole Palmer scored loads of goals for you guys and looked like the finished article already, I think we were interested in Cole Palmer. And someone like that, a bit quicker, a bit trickier, with a bit more end product. And I think that for me, James McAtee would be is perfect for a Man City team. Now, he's more of a Man City player for me.
Yeah.
The Salford Silver, as you guys coined. I think he would fit perfectly in that Man City team, but going up against teams at the back end of the season where we're fighting for points, I'm not sure if he's the right player to be in that battle.
I get it, because I feel like, yeah, you're right. And I love James. He's top bloke. I've met him a couple of times. Really nice, genuinely really nice, lovely lad, and very, 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 very talented. But I understand what you mean. Is he right now a potential relegation battle player? Because it's going to be that, isn't it? It's going to be a tough season.
And it's probably not good for his development either.
He could barely get any touches, and he could sort of dull him a little bit. You never know. He might struggle a little bit, and I don't know. It's difficult for him because he's in a weird spot where, but at the same time, regular games, he could step up, and to be fair to James McAtee as well, he struggled at the start of the season with you guys last year, didn't he? And he found, he found his feet. He adapted it because he was determined enough to improve. And that's not like the Championship, isn't it? An incredibly physical league as well, It's a very tough league, isn't it, the Championship? So he did adapt to it and scored a whole bunch of goals for you. So you never know. It could surprise a few people, because some people do prosper, well, sometimes pressure makes diamonds, and he could do that. But we'll see. But Nick, thank you so much for joining me, man. Of course, it's going to be an interesting game. I absolutely, sincerely hope, like you, surprise a few people this season, just not City the weekend. I hope it goes the way around. And thank you very much for coming on once again, mate. Guys, please check out Nick's channel, Sheffield United Way. There'll be a link in the description below. Of course, let me know down in the comments what you make of this game, what you make of Sheffield United's chances this season. Give this video a like, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you for the weekend for the watch along. Bye-bye.